Hey guys, welcome back to Heart of the Hero, Tools for Successful Minds. I'm Dan, I'm here with Greg. We like to dive into some consciousness issues, mindfulness issues that you might be having, things that are causing you suffering. We like to give you guys ways of dealing with that, ways out, ways of separation, ways of rewiring your brain and finding out the right trick, the right thing to say, the right way to condition your mind so that you can get the most out of your life and your success. So what are we talking about, Greg?
What's up, guys? Today we're talking about how to be authentic. Maybe you have problems with being who you really are. Maybe you have problems putting yourself out there in a way that's true to what you feel, what you need, what you want, and who you actually are, right? So a lot of times you'll get in a situation where maybe you're out with someone or people or friends or family or whoever it is for you, right? And you censor, just leaving a little bit. Maybe it's just you didn't want to say something and so you don't, but it kind of causes you some pain because you're feeling, well, I kind of did want to say that. I kind of did want to do that. And you don't. And that's not being who you really are. So there's a sensation that you're kind of cutting yourself off over and over and over again, right? And maybe you have this experience, maybe you don't, but I'm assuming if you're here, right, and you maybe have issues with being able to stay authentic without worrying about what people think, without worrying about what people think of you. It's something that you actually want to deal with. You want to have a solution. You want to stop having to suffer in this way, and maybe you think of yourself differently because you'd get to be who you really are. So today, we're going to show you some. You know what? I'll tell you what. If you stick around, right? It's up to you. It's your choice. But we're going to show you the ways that you can actually go in your own mind. You can actually rewire and become more authentic more often.
Yeah, and I think part of the process is also kind of learning how that construct that we have is kind of our life's work. You're essentially building this person your entire life. You identify with this, personality and beliefs and the things about yourself and the things you are and what you like and what you don't like and all this stuff is this construct that we build that we identify with as ourself. And what you got to remember is that sometimes the conditioning you've given yourself this far is not really authentic to you. Essentially, like you picked this behavior up from somebody else. You learned it from a parent. You saw somebody do it something this way. You're like, oh, I want to try it that way. And like you just started being that and you started handling it a certain way. Like, often we handle things emotionally pretty close to the way that our parents did. That's kind of just a reflection of growing up. Probably at this point, you've moved past that a little bit, and started developing your own ideals and your own opinions and how you view things. But what can happen is you'll notice that you will feel this weight of who you are. There's like such a responsibility behind the person that you've made, because what you're basically saying when you say this is me, and all that includes is that this is how I have to act. This is how it has to be. This is how people see me. And if I don't get seen this way and I don't get perceived this way, then I'm not doing right. This isn't good. This isn't me. And I think a lot of times you can feel the kind of weight of that burden of the person that you've built, because sometimes that's not exactly us. And we've been doing a lot of things that are caused by other people's opinions or judgments or views of life and the way it works, and there's certain things that we're afraid to admit to ourselves. There's certain things that we're afraid to, tell anybody about, because we know it's true about ourselves and we don't necessarily even like it, or we have a perspective about it that makes us think it's negative. And usually that's because of other people's view and what other people would think. It's not necessarily right or wrong or good or bad. It doesn't fit in that black, white, and category, because who you are is who you are. What you enjoy is what you enjoy. The things that you know to be true about yourself are true about yourself, regardless of any other influence. And I think being authentic is kind of one of the most freeing ways to really get rid of some depression, some anxiety, and I think there's some things that some self-doubt. It's going to build confidence. Like these things are going to increase just naturally because you're going to feel more like yourself. You're gonna feel like you're actually executing life the way that you want to, rather than by this kind of mask or persona that we've built. You're doing what you want to do, not what everybody else necessarily thinks you should do, and are being okay with it.
What do you mean when you say I just have a feeling that a listener, if you guys are hearing this, you might be curious, like I am. What do you mean when you say that being yourself will build confidence? What are the ways that happens?
Well, I think like any confidence that you grow comes from a place of, information. If I were to do a profession, if I was going to be a professional athlete, you know, uh, and I was going to go to the tryouts, and I hadn't really gathered all the information I needed, and I wasn't really sure of what I was supposed to do. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do, and I wasn't sure of my skills because I actually hadn't really executed or seen it in action. I haven't seen my skills in action. I wouldn't really be confident about that tryout. That I wouldn't be confident in my own skills to actually perform well because I hadn't really gathered information. I wasn't really aware of my own ability. And I think one of the things that comes from being authentic and why that helps you feel more confident is because you're gathering information about yourself. It's like you basically have to go in and ask yourself the questions of like, who am I? What do I like? What do I not like doing? Why do I act like this? Do I really need to act like this? Do I need to react to things like this? How would I want to be like? What does my life want to look like? And you do this kind of self-awareness process to try to really figure out what it is that is you and makes you tick. And so that's the information gathering process, and
I think it's kind of weird. I think it's kind of weird that there's this. We all have things we want to do, right? Everyone has kind of their own goals, their own. You just have stuff that you want to express in the world, right? Maybe you want to go and be an artist or make a certain amount of money or talk to people in a certain way without having to censor whatever it is for you, right? But even though we're driving our own bus, right? We're driving our own car, we're making the decisions. It's almost like we take on this idea that doing the things that you want to do is wrong. It's not the right way to be alive, right? Well, I want this, but I need to push all this aside and compromise here, or I need to push this aside and do this other thing because other people want me to do this. Or, well, if I said this, they wouldn't receive me well. They wouldn't accept me. So I need to not do. It's almost like
a good way of saying that is tendency wrong is that they feel like they can't.
Yeah.
Like because of all those reasons. Because it's like not necessarily it's wrong. Like you could, because maybe it's split. There's some people who are like, some people actually know they would want that life. They want that, but it feels like because of all the reasons you're mentioning, like they can't have it because of what people. That's kind of all I was saying was like, anyway.
I agree with that. I think that's one of the biggest issues and if you're on this journey kind of yourself, trying to become more authentic, trying to be more yourself, right? You've already run into this wall, right? You've already run into this wall where you're like, I know I want things and I want to express myself and do this thing and make some my own choices, but there's a wall there. Maybe it's a feeling, maybe it's people in your life who are around you who they don't really want you to say the things that you want to say because maybe they're out of alignment with their beliefs, or maybe they're not morally thinking that you're where you need to be, or whatever it is, right? The things that you want to do and be as a person may not fit with where you are. So talking and moving a little deeper into this about really being able to be more authentic, right? To be able to be more of your own self, right? You can kind of shake off. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a snake. I used to watch these documentaries. They're very cool, right? You have these big, huge snakes. They're green and black little speckles, and these big old teeth and this long tongue. And pretty much, if you look at it, they've got this hole right under their tongue. It's like, right? Well, there's these huge snakes. And you can actually watch them. They'll eat eggs, they'll eat mice, and they'll go down their body and they'll swallow it. Well, the funny thing is when you actually watch them losing their skin, you'll watch them shed sometimes, right? Most people would think that it's this instant process, right? Like they're going to just be able to crack out of this, but it's not. They actually have to kind of wriggle their way out of their own skin, right? They have to kind of wriggle their way out of it, and eventually it kind of slides off. Well, you have to do the same thing with becoming who you are authentically.
Yeah, and I think the metaphor to give anybody that kind of missed it at all, that Greg's getting at there, is that the process of doing that is difficult, and not difficult in the sense of better word would be challenging. It's going to actually challenge you as a person, because there's going to, you're like, think about it. If you've been acting the same way, this persona, this mask that you have on, like, and you've been acting this way the whole time, everybody that knows you act a certain way.
Right.
Like, for instance, I ran into this problem where when I was working in a department at my manufacturing job, where there was a time where I was a pretty happy guy. I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy, pretty lighthearted, like to sing, I dance around. I'm not really worried about people think. I'm very stoic. I like to kind of just like do things that make people like think I'm embarrassed, just get people laughing. You know, I like that kind of environment. And so I'm a pretty upbeat guy. And so what would tend to happen was after time of being like this, when I had a day that like I just didn't have the energy, or I didn't want to, or maybe I was just angry or upset or whatever it was, like it was almost like I didn't get that opportunity because so many people would be like, Dan, what's wrong? Like, oh my goodness, what's going on, man? Well, you seem so off today. Like, why aren't you singing? Why aren't you dancing? Come on, man. You got blah, blah, blah. I need my tunes, whatever. Just like, because there's this expectation of entertainment and things that people got from me that I was like giving, like entertainment and jokes and funniness and funny behavior to keep things light at work when things got rough or annoying. And it was like, so when I like stepped down from this role of, keeping people up and happy, like it was almost like I had this responsibility that I was like walking away from, and I couldn't just be in a weird place. Like I would even feel like, oh, I can't act like this because then people are going to think this, and people are going to act like this, and I'm going to think this. And I was so riddled by like what people thought of me and the view of me. And I was just started asking myself questions like, so what if they know you're sad? Like, it's almost like we want this persona, everybody. And I've noticed this in most people, is that we have this tendency in this persona to like seem like we've got everything figured out 100% of the time. Like you can't be sad, or you can't be angry, or you can't be affected by people being annoying or really bad people. Like if you let things affect you, it's weakness. If and people will see it as, oh wow, yeah, he's really depressed. Geez, like, oh man, poor him, and take pity on you, and that's embarrassing. And it's like, so you try to avoid this like authenticity of like just feeling your emotions and just being that way. And who cares what anybody thinks about it? This is how you feel in this moment. So you should reflect exactly how you feel. Now, granted, if you're feeling rage, that could be a destructive reflection of an emotion. So try to do that a little bit away from people, especially if you're at work. I've been in the situations like that. Punchy things not cool at work. So, and that kind of, that anger, but we don't let ourselves do that. We want to save face. And so we throw this mask up and we bottle our emotions up. We're like, oh no, yeah, no, it's funny, it's cool, I'm just blah, blah, blah. I'm just, and then we just bottle that up and leave it. And then we never actually deal with it. And after you do that for so long, it just becomes so heavy and just becomes so pressure filled to hold people's attention and not let them see the cracks and not let them see your weakness, because you feel like they're going to judge you and embarrassment. And you have this, image to uphold that you've built for yourself, and you're not really being authentic, and you wish you could change, but you have all this expectation. It's like, it can be maddening and frustrating. And the way out is just cold turkey, man. Just because the resistance and the people noticing is going to happen anyway. People are going to notice no matter how fast you change. Gradual over, this doesn't matter. Like, they're going to notice and they're going to comment because you've been acting one way and now you don't. Maybe not as many notice if you don't just go straight cold turkey, change it up, change the game. I'm gonna act like how I want, but you're still going to get that. You're still people are going to treat you different and notice and expect you to be a certain way, and you're not going to be there. It can affect your family too, because a lot of people put up a little big face for their family, and that one's even tougher to change than, friends and coworkers.
Right. I think the family one is a pretty deep knot. And I want to point something out. If you're kind of chugging along with us, there's a predator here. I like the term monster, and I use it a lot because it can kind of represent some of the stuff that happens that we're kind of really trying to run away from, right? It's chasing you and you know it, but you can't maybe get away because you're not fast enough, or it's got bigger teeth than you. Well, there's something that is actually going to keep you, and it probably is keeping you right now, from making this even a possible decision for you to be your authentic self consistently. And what that is your mask itself, right? He mentioned, if you were paying attention, he mentioned that you have this persona that you put forward, right? You have this idea of yourself that you put forward, and people see that and they're like, oh, cool, they're great, they have everything under control. And you may not have everything under control, but that's what you put forward. Well, the number one thing that's going to stop you, right? It's the crocodile in the water, is your own mask that you've built up. Because what happens is, the more that you continue to stop yourself, right? You block yourself from even activating the parts of yourself that you believe you actually want to express, right? Maybe you want to say something and you don't. Well, you chopped off one of your own arms, right? Maybe you want to go somewhere and you don't. Well, you just took off one of your own fingers, right? And you become this mutilated kind of person inside, in the sense of you don't even know who you are authentically. You don't know what brings that out of you. What situations do you need to be in to be who you actually truly believe that you are and know that you want to be? So the thing to really pay attention to, and maybe you're feeling some resistance, or you're not sure, or you're kind of, oh, well, this is right. If you're feeling this, if you're having these sensations right now, and you're kind of like, what that is it's the construct, the idea of yourself that you've built up is telling you, you don't need this. No, you don't need this. This isn't you. This is someone else. Like, you're fine. Your life is good. Everything's fine about you. You don't have these kinds of problems. You're authentic. Well, you're authentic most of the time, right? Your friends see you as that you're a fun person, and all these things will come up. But that's not you. That's not you, because you were the one who clicked on this video, you who watched this show, who chose this audio cast, right? You actually picked to come here because it mattered to you. Don't lose.
And there's an inner, and there's an inner voice. There's that, it's like an inner voice in your head. It's that inner monologue, what your thoughts are, that main thought stream that you kind of like, I wonder if I took out the trash, and if I mean, you kind of have this train running in your thought, and what that will do, what sometimes that you can't, it's like what you desire, it doesn't line up with what you have or the way that you think, and it kind of hits your brain weird, because you're like, I know I want this and I want something like this, but why do I feel like I can't do this? It's like you feel like you can't have what you want, you can't be the way you want. For whatever reason, we have these perspectives that we're held back in any way to be in whatever we want to be. And a rewiring a little, so I want to give a little nugget here for this, because it's a self-awareness nugget. It's a self-inquiry process where it's asking yourself targeted questions. You ask yourself, like, what is, like, if you were to ask yourself a question like you want to write down 3 beliefs that you have, write down 3 beliefs that you have, and then ask yourself, why do you have those beliefs? And then ask yourself, could you believe something else? Like, you go through this process of going through each one of these and asking yourself why you believe this. Could you believe something else? Why do you feel resistance to opening your mind to other options? Why do I feel this resistance? Well, because I feel this way. Well, why do you feel this way? Keep asking yourself these questions and dig down deep into the core of these beliefs. And a lot of times you'll find that some of the beliefs that you have kind of just vanish, like halfway through the process of asking these questions. And why do I believe this? Because this, and this. Well, why do I believe that? Well, because this, and this, and that makes me feel this. Well, why do I feel that? After you go through that process, you'll get kind of far enough down, and sometimes you see, like, oh, like, this belief is totally based on like just like a random emotion I had when I was 15. But you've been like stoking it, and every time you have a conversation and this topic was brought up, you've brought this up, and you're like, yeah, this is how I feel, and this is how I believe. And then another year later, the same conversation gets brought up. Yeah, I've always thought this, and it gets more intricate. You get more evidence for why you believe this, and explaining yourself and talking to other people. And eventually, it's just this belief in your head that you have, but you've never questioned. And so part of the rewiring process here is more of like an unwiring process. It's like, do some of these cables even need to be here? And so you're going in and actually asking yourself these deeper questions, and really keeping digging, scratching at one until it either is like, yeah, this is why I believe this. And then like, this is a strong belief I have. I actually do believe this, and here's why. Because you couldn't trick yourself up. Challenge yourself to see if what you actually believe is what you believe, because that's a way that'll show you some things like, oh, like, this isn't actually me. I don't really believe that. I just was taught that at my parents' house or Sunday school or Catholic school or whatever. And I'm not even hitting on religion, but religion's a big one. I mean, everybody, if you've grown up in any type of religious setting in your family, you've felt the feeling of like, I don't know if this is for me. I feel like at some point you kind of like, is this something that I believe, or is this something that, that's a very common one, is that type of process. Is like, oh, do I believe this? That's the same process as this, is asking yourself and digging in, seeing how you feel about it, and
well, and I want to hop on this, because that is a huge deal in the communities that talk about belief. But the problem is that it's almost like we reserve belief only for moral and religious settings. But throw that out, because everything that you choose to do in reality is a belief. It's based on a belief, right? If I call you and I tell you that you have a piece of mail coming tomorrow, right, and you just Yeah, cool. I'll expect it. The only reason that it happens is because you believe that. You have a belief that I sent it, or that the postman or woman will deliver it, or that the mail center will distribute it properly. All of these beliefs are individual. You could just get rid of them at any time. So don't get caught in the trap of when we say belief and belief change. It's not a, it has nothing to do with your core beliefs unless you want it to. You can change any belief that you want. You could tomorrow change the belief that you have to make a certain amount of money, just like that. But you have to start by becoming what you are, who you are authentically, because you can't actually, and this is what I want to kind of get into, you can't really make a whole lot of change if you're not being who you are for real. Because what happens is you get caught up. Have you ever told a lie? Have you ever told a lie that was really, really small, right? It was really small. And maybe it was to a parent or to a pastor or to a close friend. And you have to keep building this lie. And not only do you have to keep building it, you have to keep remembering what you said. Like you have to keep, you have to keep remembering it every time they bring it up. So did you do this? And you have to keep rehearsing it and reciting it, and it gets heavy, and it's this intricate thing, right? It's 40 knots tied together, and it makes this ball, and you have to deal with this over and over and over and over. Well, if you think about it, if you were to imagine what it would look like in your own mind, you'll notice that your own persona is not that different. Your belief about yourself, the thing that you show people, that's not really who you are. It's not that different, because you have to maintain it constantly. If someone asks you a question, right? If someone asks you a question and 6 months before now, you had a very strong certain opinion about it. And then you've kind of let that go. You've kind of moved past that. You kind of thought, well, maybe that's not the case. I've talked to some people. I've kind of come across some interesting stuff. And yeah, I don't really think that anymore. But you don't want to get into an argument about it. You don't want them to say, well, you said this 6 months ago and it was this huge thing. You don't want to do that. So you say, yeah, I believe that. That makes sense to me. Yeah, that's still who I am. That's what I'm choosing. Well, what are you doing to your own mind? You are convincing yourself not to believe yourself. You are convincing yourself that you don't need to trust who you actually are. And you do this consistently, and it becomes this huge thing that you can't keep up with. And so you don't ever remember, oh, this actually is what I like, because you don't have any likes. You don't have any desires. You don't have any needs.
And on the point of authenticity, being totally authentic, there's a certain kind of principle that we need to remember, because all this is useful stuff, all the tools, the mindsets, the ways of thinking, the perspectives, they're all good stuff. It's good it's good wiring in your construct. It's good to take on these mindsets and go through these processes and take them seriously. But also another thing to understand is that this is in fact a construct, that this is in fact something that you've built. This persona, this mask, this thing preventing you from being maybe your true inner self. And the idea of self is actually the problem in and of itself, because you at your core, you at your base are an experience of this. You are experiencing what it is like to be a person. Our entire body is set up to experience sensations, touch, sight, smell, hearing, taste, all these things. We are, that's what our body is a consciousness, receiving information, perceiving things, perceiving thoughts, and being aware of them. That's what we are at our core. And what we forget sometimes is that because this is something that we've been building our whole life, it wasn't something we were born with. We don't have the personality that we have now that we were when we were 4 years old. We don't have the same intelligence as we do now as we did when we were 4 years old. We don't have the same understanding as we do now as we did when we were 4 years old. And any of the ages younger after that, we grew and we changed into the people that we are. It's because the construct, the idea of ourselves grew. And people resist this idea because they think, well, I'm myself. I am this person. It's like, yeah, no, you are. Like, I'm not disputing the fact that everything about who you are right now is in you right now, and you interact with and operate with, alongside with. But what I'm saying is that you identify as that person because you have this construct in your mind, where in reality, being truly authentic is that we are just awareness. We are just presence. We are just perceiving sight, sound. This idea of self is not an illusion, because it is there. It is real. Not physically, but it manifests and you experience it. So it is real. but it is not us. We experience what it's like to be us. And that might not be that might not be very helpful for some, but some people might understand it and see why it's helpful, because the separation, the distinction between I am mad, or I hate myself, or I hate my life, or I'm so tired of this, and this is just stupid, and all these like, I can't do this, and this I. It's like, who is this I? Who is this person? Can you find that I? You might just say, well, that's me. Yeah, but you are a body. You are skin and organs and muscles and bones and cells and atoms and a consciousness. You are a consciousness experiencing this world through a body. And that is the truth, and the only truth about being a human. The rest gets built by your experience. The nature of the nature of that vessel, and the nurture that vessel went through, creates who you are. And that doesn't mean that's not real, and that doesn't mean that's not who you are. But it's important to separate yourself and say that because when you separate and can say, I am just experiencing this, these are my memories. Because once you start, like I said, once you start rewiring and you see how well you can just kind of change into any person and actually iron out areas in your life by rewiring the way your brain thinks and how you respond to things and how you handle emotions. Once you do that well enough for long enough, you start to see that kind of who you are is a little relative, because who you are was completely different before I made a decision to be somebody else. So who am I? The old me, the new me that I'm becoming, or am I the person that's deciding to be a new me? Is the person deciding to be a new me even really a person, or is it just the knower, the viewer, the consciousness, the desire, the transcendent desire? Your experience as this person that you are now is unpleasant, and so you feel the natural desire to try to change that. But you once you start changing yourself, who are you then? Because if you've changed yourself and you've changed so much about you, are you that person anymore? Have you just picked a new construct? Because you are still perceiving that new construct, that new world. The one thing that did not change through that process is that you are still a consciousness experiencing what it's like to be a person.
And the shorthand for that is you are a belief. We can get caught up in language and ways of thinking and ideas and perspectives and all this stuff, and it's helpful and it's useful, but I think the distilled understanding is just to know that you are dynamic. You are dynamic. You all these limits, all these limitations you put on yourself, or you feel like people put on you, they're not real. They're not actually keeping you from becoming who you want to become. You are dynamic. You tomorrow, right? And this, I love to use money examples because money gets people excited. It gets people thinking, yeah, okay, if I gave you $600,000 free and clear, no taxes, right? It's in your bank right now. You're sitting on it. You can press a button and spend it on whatever you want. Go to any place you want. Go to any show you want. Go to any store you want and spend it. 600 grand, right? All of those beliefs that you have now about, well, a $50 steak's really expensive or whatever, right? It could be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 other beliefs about the world. I would never wear shoes like that. Well, you wouldn't now, because the beliefs that you have are fitted for the life that you're in. Now, you could change that at any time. And that's what we talk about a lot here with working on your own consciousness, working on your own mind, really kind of separating and changing the way that you view the world through the lens that you're in right now. And a lot of that starts by becoming more authentic, because the more that you become more of who you are, right? There's this dissonance that happens, and it's very deep and it's very quick and it's very sneaky. What happens is you will have something happen, right? And it happened, and it was real, and it was there, and you felt a certain kind of way, and someone said something or someone did something or something happened, and you know what it was, but instead you'll kind of cover it up. You'll try and hide it behind a rock, and you'll say, well, that's not what it was. That's not what happened. That's not how I felt. Well, this person said this, and maybe this is what it is, and maybe this is what I felt, or maybe I don't have to go do this, or maybe I should go here. And you'll just make up rationalizations over and over, but you know what you felt. You know what it was. You know it was there. Who knew that? It was you. You actually were aware of it. But what happens is all this other stuff comes in, this language comes in, these patterns come in, these minds come in, and you talking to yourself, and you convince yourself that what actually happened wasn't what happened, right? And you do this so consistently that you fool yourself into believing you're someone that you're not. And the more that you kind of undo this, the more you start to see, wow, like I do this a lot. Like, man, I just did it this morning. Like, oh, yeah. And you'll start to notice, you'll start to become aware, and it's a gradual process, but you'll slowly become more and more aware that you actually do this every day. And if you start to see that and you start to be able to control that and make some changes, you can actually become dynamic and authentic in your real self. And you'll feel so much better, because as you actually become more authentic, right? You put more yourself out there, you say the things you want to say, you do the things that you want to do, people will respond to you better. Because have you ever had the experience? Have you ever had that? It's a really weird experience. It's kind of frustrating, right? In here, because you're talking to them, and you know that you're not actually talking to them. You're talking to something they've seen on TV. You're talking to something that they've read in a book, and it's not really their own opinion. And you know what their opinion is. Maybe you heard them say it to someone 5 minutes ago, but they're not saying it to you. Why? Maybe you're in a group. Maybe you're with certain people and they want to be cool. Maybe they have a certain amount of status they want and they don't want to tell you certain, right? But you know it's not them. You know they're just saying stuff. They're just giving you an opinion because it would sound good. It would make you think, or even worse. Have you ever talked to someone who you know is only saying something because they think that that's what you want to hear from them? That's annoying, right? Well, you got to recognize you do that all the time. That's called being inauthentic.
Yeah, and it's like the people that you see, the cool people, the confident people, the people that you want to be, the people that just capture people's attention, and there's not always. Not always. Sometimes it's so legitimately fake that they just have an amazing persona built to please people. But those people that you know are cool and you just kind of are drawn to are the people that are so secure in themselves that they're totally willing to just be themselves, regardless of opinions, regardless of what you might think. They're not trying to be rude or push up it in your face, but they think away, they feel the way, they're comfortable with themselves, they know who they are, they act on it, they like who themselves, and these stuff just emits this kind of glow, this confidence, this appeal of a person, because you're just like, man, I want to be like that. I just want to be like real. We talk about that a lot, and in younger culture, millennial cultures, like being real, being 100. It's like that. That we mean, like, we like people who are straight up upfront value, and people don't do it, man. People don't do it at all. People are super fake. Like we walk around with these masks, we walk around with these responses, and that whole telling people what to want to hear. I stopped talking to people. Like I'm just like, okay, yeah, okay. Because I don't care. I don't care to correct you. I don't care to, like, because I'm not even talking to you right now. Like, is this even you? Like, how about, like, let's have this talk when you actually want to talk about something that you really feel, rather than just what you think I need to hear right now. Like, and that kind of just turns me off to people, where it's like, I don't, and I think that people are agree with that people that are not authentic, and people that are just like tell you what you ever want to hear, yes man, or they're one way around somebody and they're another way around another group of friends, and they'll hit you up here, but then when this starts happening, you don't hear from them at all. These just fake people with this fake love to try to, like, build their own personas. It's like it's important to find people as well that are more authentic, and I think, and this is one of those things where the tips and tricks in this are not really so complicated. The tips and tricks of this are more oriented around, like, look, you know who you are, like, the things that you do that are not really you, or you do to get a laugh, or you do because this person likes that, and if you mention something related to that, they'll like talking to you, and you can start up a conversation, and you have a friend. Like, those type of things, like, that we do, that it's not you, and you know it. And those things might seem good, but it's way more fulfilling to get friends and get relationship and get fellowship with people when you've done it from a place of authenticity, and a place that you are actually comfortable with, that is actually you, because then the people that are around you and the people you interact with are actually people that are interested in who you are as a person, not some face, not some fake mask that they get to look at that pleases them. They liked you because of who you are naturally. That's a real friend. That's a real relationship. That's real fellowship. That's real camaraderie. That's people interacting as two authentic selves. That's a relationship. And I think that we bar ourselves and we restrict ourselves from having this authentic platonic and romantic love with people, because there's friendships and there's relationships, and they're two different dynamics, but both of which are super affected by how authentic the person is being with the other person up front. we have a 50%, we have above a 50%, look, we have above a 50% divorce rate in this country because people aren't being authentic with each other from the get-go. If people are authentic with themselves and actually honest with themselves about what they wanted in another person or what they wanted their marriage to look like, or if they even wanted to get married, and were more authentic and didn't worry so much about hurting the other person, and actually was just upfront exactly how they wanted to be upfront, they would not even end up in those relationships. They would because those two people would be being authentic, see that this wasn't really going to work, and then boom, never even get to that relationship. Whereas they kind of had some things in common. It was fun. They had a couple good nights and they enjoy doing this, but they fight a lot. And, you know, and every time I come home, she's in a bad mood and he never does anything. And then it just turns into this long fighting, annoying relationship that makes both people miserable. And those type of things happen mainly because you're not being authentic with yourself, not being honest with yourself about the things that you want and the things that you want out of a friend or a relationship or a spouse. And if you aren't, you can get to a place where you're authentic all the time, you'll build a friendship and build a group of people that like you for you, and find relationships just like that. And that's something that builds confidence. That's something that makes you feel good. That's something that alleviates a lot of the loneliness or suffering, and also the depression of the weight of the mask that you've been having to wear, because you know you have people around you that you can just take off that and just flow and being present and not worry about looking stupid or being embarrassed or being judged, you know?
Yeah, and a big part of getting there, because you might be wondering, okay, like I agree, but how do I know if I'm being authentic or not? Maybe you're so caught in the mud, right? You know, you can't even find your own boot. Like you just don't know what it would be. A good way to know, a good way to know if you're being authentic, right? And you could measure this starting this way. Look at how you view other people's opinions of you. If you are very, very attached to what people think about the things that you say, you're not being authentic. I can bet you're not being authentic. I will guarantee you, because if you weren't, right, if you kind of separated yourself from that in a way that's empathetic and they matter to you, but you recognize I can't fundamentally make people make decisions. I have no control over that. So instead, you say what you're going to say, you do what you're going to do, you be here you're going to be, and you let the chips fall where they may. That's being authentic, rather than tailoring yourself to fit into a group or fit in with certain people or say certain things. And if you do that consistently, right, if you're one of those types of people, and there's nothing wrong with this, there's no judgment on this, but just recognize if you're one of those people who needs status, right, who has to have people accept them at all costs, you're not being authentic to yourself. Unless maybe that's your authentic self, that's who you are, then accept it. But you have to recognize that to be who you actually are, you're going to have to let go of other people's opinions of you. Not that they don't matter, not that they can't help you, not that you can't get advice from them, but they don't define you. You define you. And from that point, from the internal space, from your own feelings, from your own mind, you move outwards, right? You decide, you know what, my opinion of myself matters, the things that I want, and you keep moving from there, right? So maybe you're not sure if you're currently being authentic or know how to do it, but you start there, right? And the second thing that I would say, right, is if you feel good. Because if you feel good about the things that you're doing, right, and you actually feel secure in the decisions you're making, usually that's a good indicator that you actually are doing what you feel like is the right thing to do. Now, I'm not saying that you feel good with all the outcomes, with all the things that people are saying. I'm just saying the decision you make, if you do it and you're like, yeah, that was the right decision, you're probably being authentic. Because if you're not, right, if you make the wrong decision or you say the wrong thing, what happens? We all have that experience of doing something that we're not really comfortable with, that we don't really want to do. Maybe someone asks you something, maybe it's peer pressure. Maybe you could remember a time in school, middle school, high school, where you did something you didn't really want to do, right? You didn't want to do it, but you did it. And then you just felt like it kind of really cut something off from who you are, because that's how it works. That's how you operate. You actually are at all times. You're making decisions between being yourself and being who people want you to be. And you could choose at any moment. You could choose now, you could choose later, you could choose never. It's up to you. But you have to recognize that you have control over what's actually going to happen in your own experience. And the more you play with that, the more you can see it.
Yeah. And you know, just remember that, you know, a good place to start, you want to clear your mind, and it's just pretty heavy with stuff. You know, I'd recommend meditation if I didn't really want to sound super cliche. So I'm going to give you a different idea, because I think clearing your mind is just kind of like, yeah, that's cool, but sometimes you just feel good afterwards, and that's cool for that moment, and you got relaxed, and there's a lot of physical benefits of meditation and such. But I like to go a different productive route, which is like where you actually have things that you think about, where if you're kind of lost in your head and you're kind of just like trying to figure this out and you can't really see it and you're just stuck, you know, and you've accepted that you want to be more authentic and you kind of want to go through the self-awareness process, and you get to a place where you're just kind of stuck. You don't know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I feel about this. And, you know, separation. Okay. And there's a separation exercise that I did and still do on occasion. I don't necessarily have to interact with my mind in this way to get myself to that space of no identity, and no attachment to, you know, Dan and who he is. But there's an exercise that I would use to separate myself, especially in times of suffering, where I would, you know, I'd find a space where, you know, I was comfortable. I don't have to sit down. I could be standing up and do it and just close my eyes and think no past. You know, I'm just going to let go of all the attachments I have to the past right now. No attachments. And I've talked about this in a different video, but what happens is it brings it to mind. It says, oh, you mean this? Oh, you mean this? Oh, you mean this? Especially if you're suffering, that's like usually bad things. You know, they're negative things. They're things why you should be suffering, things that you've been thinking about right now that have to do with the past. And you say, yeah, I'm just letting all that past go. I'm letting the past go. And then you move on to future and you do the same thing. And then you move on to desire. No desire. I'm letting desire go. And your brain's going to be like, oh, this, oh, this, oh, this. Yeah. And you're like, yeah, I'm letting these things go. And you do that all the way through imagination, no next. And what that does is that it clears your mind of the attachment to who you are, where you're so attached, like, because when you're really in it and you're identifying, you're like, I want to get this done. And I want to try to change this. But you're so identified with yourself that when you're trying to come up with ways to change yourself or ways to do things and what you can do to kind of fix that and separate as that person, you're feeling that resistance. You know, you're feeling that I don't know. So that separation kind of pulls you away. You can do the no past, no future, no desire, no imagination, no next, and let your brain be like, oh yeah, you mean that? Oh yeah, you mean that? Oh yeah, you mean that? And you're like, yes, those, I'm letting these things go. And what that can do for you is give you a less like stressful look at it. You can be from the outside looking in at it, and rather than being so identified with its stress, trying to figure it out, you can look at your thoughts and observe them. When you find that space, you'll notice that thoughts sort of just happen. When you find that space, you'll notice that you are experiencing things, you are viewing them rather than like feeling so identified with it at the time. So I think that separation exercise is a really good way to separate during suffering, detach from the attachments of being this person that you've created, and that's a good way to get rid of some of the pressures and what people are thinking and what people are saying about you and stuff. It'll bring those to mind. You'll be like, yeah, I'm just letting those go. Okay, so they're thinking that, I'm just letting that go. And that pressure, that alleviation, that separation allows you to make better decisions from a more calm state. So I mean, Greg, is there anything else you think you can add? I mean, do you want to sum us up or?
No, honestly, I would add one more thing. If you have issues with maybe the idea of being able to separate in that way, a good shortcut, maybe it's kind of a roundabout way, but it kind of has a similar feel. Just exhaust yourself, physically exhaust yourself, right? Go for a run and really breathe out. And it might not be that long, right? You might get 5-10 minutes of the mental peace that we're talking about here, where you have that space. But you only have so much attention that you can kind of move around, right? And if your body is exhausted, if you're breathing hard, you've run quickly and your limbs are tired, or you've lifted hard, right? That kind of gives you an extreme body awareness, and you can't really put your thoughts anywhere else. You're like, whew, man, that was crazy. And in that moment, right, that 10 minutes, that 12 minutes, that 15 minutes, that 30 minutes, that hour, that's when you tackle these issues. That's when you say, you know what? Maybe I look at being more authentic, because you have this peaceful space, right? And that's really what it's all about, creating more space where you can become aware of what you actually want, what you desire, seeing the ego for what it is, the construct, whatever you like to call it, right? You can kind of start to see more stuff because you've created more space. So I will summarize, and I'll get to that in a half a second here, but I do want to slide this in because this is important. If you don't become more authentic with yourself in your life right now, could be today, could be this week, could be this year, you'll be back in this situation that you're in right now. I don't know what it was that made you come here. I don't know what it was that made you listen, that made this matter to you, but it was something that was important enough for you to put time in to want to change it. You wanted to say, you know what? I am tired of this. I'm tired of being fake. I'm tired of not being able to be true to myself. I want to be more authentic. Well, something happened in you, in your mind, in your feelings to make that so uncomfortable. You were so uncomfortable with how you were being, with how you were choosing to be, that you said, I'm going to let that go just for a second. I'm going to let those perspectives go just for a second. And maybe there's something here that could show me how to become more of who I am. So recognize that just the decision to engage with this, just the decision to say, you know what, I'm going to try and tackle this. It gives you a leg up. It gives you this edge over most people, because most people don't spend any portion of their lives recognizing who they are, what they want, what they need, interacting with the mind. This is why we get kind of cut off, right? And maybe you've had this experience. If you think about your mind often, you might get pushed off into a certain side of the community, right? Maybe new age, maybe you're in the psychological community, and people kind of don't take you seriously because you work on yourself. Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because most people don't actually have the experience of life that I'm sure that you want. You want to be happy, you want to be successful, and feel yourself being a little more happy in whatever it is that you're doing. So recognize, use these practices, right? It's something that you could start to notice. You could start to put them into practice. The no next, the no past, the no future, right? Looking at yourself as if you were just here, as if the beliefs that you have, you're not tied to them. They could move, they could go anywhere. You could kind of let them go. And as you do that, right, the more often you do that, you'll create this space. And it's very small, right? It's very small. And it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you'll recognize, oh, I can be whoever I want. I can choose to do whatever I want. So in summary, I would say the thing that you need to remember, if you choose to remember one or two things, is that you have control over this by actually going and asking yourself the questions that you need, by going in and dealing with your own mind and saying, is that who I am? Is that how I feel? Doing the exercises that were mentioned, and really creating that space to where you know you are being who you are authentically. And if this content that we're putting out is useful to you, if it's helpful to you, maybe if there's some valuable information, tips, whatever it is for you, if this is giving you energy, if this is pushing you in a positive direction, right? Stick around. This is helpful and useful. And maybe it's not necessarily your cup of tea, but if it's not, give it to someone who is, because there's not a lot of attention put on the mind these days. We kind of leave our minds in the past, right? We kind of say, you know, it's not that big of a deal. How I feel is not that big of a deal. But ultimately, everyone wants to feel better because no one likes to suffer. So if this is useful to you, right? If this is helpful to you, pay attention, right? Pay attention. Maybe we put something on in the future that's helpful to you. Maybe you have something to offer us, right? Leave a comment, say something that's useful, because ultimately the only person who's going to help you change is yourself. And the information that you take in will determine where you end up going. Anything to add, man?
No, that's it, man. You covered it right there.
All right, guys. We'll see you soon. We'll see you soon.